done in the last 10 years for me. And also, I didn't realize that Teresa had nominated me until today. That was not said to me anywhere, or I didn't see it written anywhere, so I thought maybe you just were scrounging around for me. So I yesterday sat down and actually put together some things I wanted to cover. I even sent it to my daughter, who's got her PhD, and she's teaching in the Colorado State, and asked her to review it for me. She had quite a number of changes that she suggested. I thank the Fluker family for continuing to honor Helen and for the dedication to the open and accessible awards government. And I thank the committee for choosing me. I'm honored to have this award, and thank you all for coming today. And I just mentioned that after receiving or getting the notice that I was going to receive this award, I looked back and realized the critical part that the League of Women Voters, and many of you here today, have played in me being here. Because in the spring of 2012, Sharon Brown called me and asked if I would be on the Lawrence board. And then she followed by asking if I would be the Lawrence representative to the National Convention. That was happening a couple months later. I told her that I would like a day or two to think about it. And then she asked, well, would you also consider being a co-president? So I came back and told her that I think many of you, or some of the others, maybe are here today, have had similar life-altering calls from Sharon. Deborah Duncan, Christine Salmons, Emily Reiner, Carol Williamson, Lori Huffles, among the newer ones, and I'm sure older ones too. Of course, I accepted the invitation to be on the board and to go to the National Convention, which was really eye-opening for the number of issues that they covered, the number of people who were there, the excitement of the people who attended the convention. But I begged off for co-president for a year. So this was 2012. This was the year following Kansas legislature's passage of the SAFE Act, the Secure and Fair Elections Act. So in 2012, with a new set of redrawn districts, just as we're meeting this year in 2022, Kansans had to show a government-issued photo ID in order to vote for the first time. The following year, in 2013, Kansas had to provide documentary proof of citizenship in order to register to vote. A new major impediment to voting access. Belinda Henderson was voter service chair and had to educate voters on the new laws. Belinda was a force, and I assisted Belinda. She obtained and displayed large maps at our tabling events, similar to what I purchased this year for our tabling events, that showed the new Congressional Kansas Senate, Kansas House, Kansas Board of Education, and Douglas County Commission districts. Belinda used the yellow cards, which we still use today, which give the voter deadlines, what IDs qualify as government-issued photo IDs, and the new documentary proof of citizenship requirement. Compiling all the essential information people might otherwise lose track of when trying to figure out how to register and vote. We continue to use those yellow cards today, expanding them to a full page when we have candidates' names shortly before an election. Just a year later, in 2013, when the proof of citizenship document was actually activated, the state league sent out guidelines that leagues should avoid handling certain vital documents due to liability concerns. Those forbidden documents included passports, tribal IDs, and naturalization documents. Have you heard that the Lawrence League doesn't always do what they're told? However, we felt when we were registering new voters at naturalization ceremonies, we were doing a disservice by not attaching a copy of the naturalization document with their voter registration application so that it would be complete. So we brought small copiers into naturalization ceremonies so that we would have the required copy of proof of citizenship to attach to their voter registration application. Then we took copiers to high schools, the library, other tabling events in order the voter registration would be complete in accordance with the new documentary proof of citizenship requirement. Because of that requirement, by October 2015, more than 35,000 Kansans were on the suspense list. And, excuse me, not being able to vote. Because this unprecedented and indefensible tally was becoming embarrassing to the Secretary of State, he asked that change the rules and regulations in order to remove any name that had been on the list for more than 90 days. After being removed from the list, the prospective voter would just need to fill out another application form. The State League co-president, Marge Harms, gave testimony against this change in a public hearing. And because speakers were limited to just a few minutes, and Marge's testimony was larger, she asked me to finish giving her testimony in the next few minutes. But the 90-day change was passed and implemented anyway. I was elected to the Kansas board in 2015 as voter series chair and witnessed the work of co-presidents it reminds me It reminds me of all the hard work we did. But they purchased monthly updated voter suspense list data. Delivering the constituents' names on the suspense list to the Kansas legislators, so they would know who in their districts was on that suspense list and not able to vote for them. In December 2015, the ACLU contacted Marge Arns and Carol Neal, the co-presidents of the State League, to see if the Kansas League would be plaintiff against the Secretary of State for proof of citizenship requirement. The lawsuit was Fish v. Kobach, as Mr. Fish agreed to be a plaintiff before the League of Women Voters of Kansas got the board together and got the approval to be a plaintiff. The Secretary of State was not pleased with the legal challenge. When he called us communists, we were at first amused and then delighted when we had a surge of new members across the state. Marge Arns mentored me by inviting me to go with her when giving testimony at the Capitol, to meet with her and legislators, to the district court hearing for Fish v. Kobach, to the Mainstream Coalition Awards banquet in Johnson County when the League received an award, and to accompany her when Give Me a Ballot author Ari Berman came to Topeka and wanted to see historical sites. As the State League co-president, Marge was invited to give a presentation in February 2016 to the Kansas Committee for the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights regarding the proof of citizenship requirement. The committee allowed others to present, so after Marge testified to the broad problems of the documentary proof of citizenship, I presented the boots on the ground testimony. I talked about how Lawrence had taken a lead in trying to contact those on the suspense list. And I know Marge remembers. Marjorie. First, we tried calling those on the list, and Melissa's Wick was a big caller for that list. So they would know that they needed to provide proof of a birth certificate, a passport, or other document in order to vote. There was only a partial list of phone numbers. Most didn't answer, and even those that did answer or returned our messages said they would submit their document. But we found a month later, many still were on the suspense list. The weekend before the 2014 November general election, we decided to track down people in person. And we went to the student housing around KU and portions of East Lawrence in the Pinckney neighborhood where suspense list numbers were higher. After 30 hours of door-to-door, door to suspense person door, we got 30 people to submit their document in time to vote for the November 2014 election. 30 hours, 30 people. This work was my testimony for the Civil Rights Commission. At the end of that Civil Rights hearing, 2 young people approached us, Marge and I, and said that they were surprised to learn that a group was advocating for young people to vote. What have we been doing? Those 2 young people were Davis Hammett, the founder and president of the newly formed loudlight.org, and Kate Davis, who was part of Brian McClendon. If you remember Brian McClendon, he was the founder, the person who put together Google Earth from Lawrence, and he was running for Secretary of State, and he now teaches up at KU. But anyway, his work to create online voter registration with KSVotes.org. And Kate is now on the governor's staff and has been for a few years. This one introduction has led to a really beneficial collaboration as the league continues to partner with, of course, Davis Hammett. And we contact Kate fairly regularly for needs from the governor's office. In April 2017, Teresa Briggs and I were installed as co-presidents for the state league. Teresa and I learned that the Kansas Health Foundation was awarding 3-year grants up to $75,000 a year for groups who would promote civic engagement. The Kansas League was not eligible at that time because we were not a 501c3, which was a requirement. However, we learned that Kansas Appleseed, based here in Lawrence, was awarded one of these grants. Teresa and I spoke with Bennett Magnuson. Bennett, who went to school with my son, was the executive director of Kansas Appleseed at the time. And we asked if the league could be assistance to the voter education in their area in southeast Kansas that they had chosen to work with in this grant. And Kansas Appleseed agreed to partner with the Kansas League to provide 5 voter registration trainings a year for the years of 2018, 2019, 2020. In exchange, they would give the state league $3,000 a year to help cover our costs. So in 2018 and 2019, we gave evening trainings in Pittsburgh, Independence, Chanute, Iola, and also did voter registration tabling in Pittsburgh, Moran, Humboldt, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a few of those cities, maybe Tracer knows. We developed county-specific yellow cards with their own county information on them, and provided those, application forms, and other documents to these groups. COVID stopped our in-person activities in 2020, but we did some virtual training. We often had 15 to 25 people at these meetings in these small towns. We maintain our relationship with Kansas Appleseed and some of those in southeast Kansas. The League was also invited to speak in Garden City to talk with people interested in joining the League. Marge Arns and I made that trip, that delightful trip to Garden City, and got 7 new at-large members, leaving them with a box of voter registration materials. We visited with people in Lindsborg, we got 4 new members. We explained voter registration at Fort Hays State University and helped conduct the voter registration drive. By September 2019, we had 69 at-large members across the state from 23 cities ranging from Goodland in northwest to Independence and Little to Parker. We lost most of those memberships in 2020 and 2021 as COVID stopped our in-person events. At-large membership is slowly renewing again though. Do you know at one time Kansas had 29 local leagues? We can do that again. Another big project from Kansas, the Kansas League, was the centennial celebration of the 19th Amendment. In 2017, as Teresa and I took the state leadership, we started looking for ideas on how to honor the centennial and the work of the suffragists. Martha Pine, then first vice president for the League, and later Jackie Lightcap, who was office administrator, co-chaired the centennial committee. They recruited Joan Wagner, who, if you know Joan, she's a force of nature. And she helped develop the 3 main projects and secure grant funding. The first project was a traveling exhibit, which consisted of 7 3-foot wide, 7 foot tall, or 6 foot tall maybe, panels that gave the timeline, explained the work of the Kansas suffragists, and ended with current Kansas women leaders. And the second part of that was the March to the Polls effort to canvass, educate, and get out the vote for the 2020 elections. And the third was the Kansas booth, Kansas League booth at the Kansas State Fair, where we had the traveling exhibit. So we actually had 2 booth space. We had exhibit cards that showed and explained the exhibit itself, the 7 panels. And we had bookmarks with Kansas suffrage information. I believe there was 8 different ones. And members from around the state attended that booth so they could explain and talk to people and invite them to join the League. The traveling exhibit did exactly that. It traveled the state to over 60 locations and was viewed by over 100,000 people. If anybody has an event they want that exhibit, we have it. More recently, the Kansas League has provided voter information to local leagues and at-large members about the August 2 ballot, and the constitutional amendment that would have eliminated women's right to bodily autonomy in our Kansas Constitution. And currently, the 2 constitutional amendments are on the ballot. We hope that you both, we hope you vote no on both of those amendments. We will continue giving testimony against voter suppression, undemocratic and discriminatory laws, and especially those dreadful ideas that pop into legislators' heads without any thought or study. So again, I thank the Fluker family for the award. It reminds you of the opportunities that the League provides to those who want to get involved in our civic engagement, and the importance of bringing others along with you. If any of you would like to accompany me to any hearing or event, please don't hesitate to call me. I'd love to have you along. Thank you.